Hello and welcome to Investing Confidential. Today, I'm going to talk about what's going on in Brazil, obviously, why it's important for investors, and how what's happening in Brazil could have a real impact on the global economy. But first, let me just give you some background. I've been traveling to Brazil for close to 30 years. I've been all over the country as an investor. I invested in hundreds of companies, most of them public companies. So I have a good understanding of the Brazilian economy, the politics, and obviously the what's going on the ground. And just to start, I think most of you have seen the footage. Some of it's playing here in the background right now of what happened over the last, you know, 3 or 4 days. You had protesters rioting, storming the congressional buildings. First, let me just tell you one thing that didn't really come out. If you see some of these pictures, what I can tell you is I've been to Brasilia. This isn't these buildings are enormous. They're like this Soviet style massive buildings, from a bygone era, and the amount of people that were there, in the press they were saying a few thousand. I'm sorry, folks. I can tell you right now from firsthand knowledge, you must have had over 100,000 people. Okay, maybe more. So when you see pictures of people, spread out over these are massive buildings. So the amount of people that were there is much greater than what the press has told you. But the real fact is that these protests have been going on for almost 2 months. They've been almost every day, all over the country, blocking traffic in some major cities. This is a very divided country. It's unfortunately, obviously, you have hundreds of people have been arrested. So now you're seeing they've cracked down. They're finally stopping this. But this was, the governor of Brasilia was behind this. There are reports that the military is supporting these protesters. So it's a very dangerous situation right now. Certainly now you're hearing that there's calls now if I have Bolsonaro extradited back to Brazil. Extradited, it's crazy to say that because he's not even arrested. He's in a hospital, recovering still from a stab wound he had in the stomach in 2018 that was never healed. So, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure how the politics is going to play it out, but I can tell you from an economic standpoint for Brazil and for the globe, it's going to be substantial. So why is Brazil important? Why do we care about Brazil? Well, we should care. It's one of the top 10 economies in the world. It was actually at one point before COVID and before all the problems, it was the seventh largest economy in the world. It's the second largest economy in the Western Hemisphere next to the US. It's the top 10 in terms of auto sales in the world. All right. The Brazilians buy a lot of cars. It's 200 plus million people. Second largest beef producer in the world. The largest supplier of soybeans in the world, right? And soybeans are a key ingredient for a lot of consumer goods, food goods around the world. So Brazil is a major player in food production, also in clean energy and energy production. They generate probably, I don't know, maybe one of the top three producers of carbon credits. They have low cost energy because a lot of it comes from hydro. And certainly it's something that we have to be aware of as investors, that if they have problems down there, it's going to affect everyone. And certainly from the US standpoint, some of the largest companies, I don't care whether it's Microsoft or General Electric or Honeywell, a lot of these companies have big exposure to Brazil, okay, because Brazil is a huge consumer market, second largest consumer market in the Western Hemisphere. A weak Brazil is not good for the U.S., folks. It's not good. This turmoil down here is going to have its ramifications, or it's gonna have contagion, and it's going to affect the global economy, which is going to not be good for the U.S. So just recently, I don't know if today actually, the World Bank lowered its global growth, probably looking at what's going on in Brazil and China, to 1.7% from 3%. I mean, that's a major slowdown. I would say that's we're going to have some of the slowest growth we've had in 30 years, maybe 40 years in the global economy. So the World Bank has finally caved now. And essentially what the World Bank is saying is it's going to be a global recession. So 1.7% essentially means that there are a lot of economies that we've talked about before that are going into recession. Going back to Brazil, here's consumer confidence. It's weakening. This is a little old, this chart, but it's even weakening more. And again, as I mentioned, Brazil's a big consumer of autos and a lot of other things, so it's going to have an effect. Here's Brazil Purchasing Management Index (PMI) weakening, confirming that Brazil, is in a major slowdown. And obviously, all this political nonsense that's going on is going to have a huge impact on Brazilian consumers. So what's going on specifically, and why are people get really concerned? Okay, so the new administration coming in has declared they're going to do a massive social spending program without financing it. They're going to print money or borrow it, and the debt in Brazil, as you can see here, is forecast to explode. That's not good, because Brazil in the past has had defaults, a number of defaults in the past. So we're heading in that direction. Again, not good for the global economy. The other dangerous thing as an investor, is China's influence over Brazil. They see Brazil for what it is, massive natural resource country. So they're looking to swap out, outdated engineering, looking to lend them money, and certainly for natural resources. And it's Latin America overall is very important to China. Okay, the U.S. unfortunately, in terms of policy, this goes back 20 years, has really abandoned Brazil and all of Latin America. China has kept up its influence. And this, again, from a U.S. standpoint, from a U.S. investor, you have to be concerned about these things, because Brazil has major issues. And if it continues to have these issues, you're going to have more influence by China, which, again, taking the politics out of it, again, from a U.S. standpoint, is, a concern. Now, Brazil has major problems here. It's, in terms of wealth gap, it's probably number 2 in the world. You can see here, it's huge. And obviously, one of the reasons that Lula was elected was supposedly he thinks he can lower this wealth gap. And we'll see. Yacht sales are exploding in Brazil. This is an example of, Brazil's economy is going down, yet people are buying yachts like crazy. I mean, it tells you that the wealth gap there is a serious issue that has to be addressed. But again, the bottom line is the economy is turning down, and this is not good. So the real question is Brazil a place to invest? All right, it's a big economy. It's got a huge stock market. And I will tell you, at some point, yes, some of the greatest trading rallies I've ever been involved with have been from Brazil. This is a global standpoint. When Brazil begins to move to the upside or the downside, but into upside, it moves fast and massive. Okay, absolutely massive. For example, when we bottomed in March of 2009, the great financial crisis, I think the S&P rallied maybe 30, 40%. Brazil rallied 140%. So you need to watch Brazil. You need to look at, for example, here's EWZ chart. I mean, we've been basing for quite some time. I think support level is going to be around 25. So you traders, put that on your agenda. Watch EWZ. I think it's going to come in. There's no doubt in my mind it's going to come in. We're going to see it come down. And at 25, that's a really good support level. Brazil's already tested some major support levels, so this will be a good test on the charts. And then I would probably go in and start trading, looking for a big trading move in Brazil, no matter what the news is. Again, most likely the news will be negative, but by that time, everyone will know that Brazil has problems, and all the negative will be filtered in, and you're probably going to get I'll mention it when I see things moving in the future. So Brazil, problems, watch it. It's important. And if we hit that 25 level, I think we will, there's going to be a huge trading opportunity. So put it on your radar. And as always, investors, be careful out there.